Welcome to our first ever table talk, Chasing Self-Esteem today. And my name is Leslie Brown. I'm a partner at Expanding You, and I will be serving as your moderator today. And we were so excited. Jeff sent out this communication around the differences between self-esteem and self-worth. And we just had so much feedback, so many comments, so many questions that we thought this is exactly the kind of topic we're looking for. This is the first of many table talks. And the idea here is for us to hear from you what you want to dive more deeply into. What can we're so passionate about building a really engaged learning community. And so it's really about knowing more of what interests each of you. What are the things that you want to explore or that you're struggling with and coming up against? And how can we leverage the power of community to support one another and to continue all of our journeys on growth and evolution, which of course at Expanding You, we are so passionate about. A couple of quick notes about today. Please know I'll be monitoring the chat. So if you have questions or comments, you're welcome to drop them there. You can do so publicly, or if you prefer, when you go to the chat box, it says to, and you can send it to everyone, or using that drop down, you can actually just send it to me privately, in which case I will keep your name to myself, but I will make sure that Jeff and Lynn catch your question. We'll have some time for some open Q&A nearer to the end of our hour together. So of course, there's opportunity for more discussion there. And if anything comes up that anyone wants to dive more deeply into, we might even have the opportunity to do that. So it is my great pleasure to pass the mic over to Lynn and Jeff, the founders of Expanding You. And again, if you have any questions throughout our session this afternoon, please just drop me a question in the chat. And thank you again for sharing your time with us today. We're honored to have you here. Over to you, Jeff and Lynn.
Excellent, Leslie. Thank you. I just want to make a note for everybody too. Please have a pen and paper. We're going to do an experiential exercise and you're going to need something to write on. So how did we come up with this topic? Why did I write about it in the first place? And it's a big part of the journey that we do at Expanding You is being able to stand in or live from our self-worth. And so myself in this journey, most of my life, I haven't been able to tune into my actual self-worth. It's always been around ego, self-esteem kind of pieces and areas where I've been able to do okay with it and areas where I haven't done so well. And what prompted part of this was there was a day when I woke up at like 6:30 in the morning and I didn't have anything in my calendar for work until the afternoon. And so I just laid in bed and I got on my YouTube and I just enjoyed basically 2 hours of YouTube. And in the past, my egoic mind would kick in and be like, yeah, lazy, I'd get guilting myself or criticizing myself, and this morning I didn't. I just really enjoyed it. And when I was finished, I got up, I was like, I actually had an emotional reaction to what it felt like to just have worth and value, regardless of my behavior, regardless of what the ego might have said about productivity or any of that stuff. None of it was there. The ego was silent. And I had this visceral experience. And so I remember calling Lynn and sharing with her oh, I just had a profound experience of I'm worthy because I'm alive. Doesn't matter if I went on YouTube or not. And so that kind of got this started. And I'm going to pass over to Lynn, who's going to share an example of what it's like the other way.
Well, this is from a long time ago, but I've been married twice. And when my second marriage, we decided it wasn't working. What happened for me was absolutely shockingly horrifying in the sense of my sense of self-esteem plummeted. And it was I was still a professional. I still had work. I still was a mom and Timothy was doing fine and had a house to live in. But I literally felt destitute. And that rocked my world. Like, how does your self-esteem drop so dramatically? And that really was the beginning of the journey towards, if self-esteem is this vulnerable, goes up and down with, marriage or health or finances, like, what the dickens is more solid? What is it that we could really have as a foundation? And that journey took me all the way up to today and the work we do and so on. But it really was a tremendous eye-opener about self-esteem. And so when Jeff was sharing his experience and we started talking, we thought this is just a great topic to write about and to explore. And is there positive self-esteem that really works? And what's the kind of self-esteem that doesn't work for us necessarily, and so on. So we're going to do a deeper dive into that the whole conversation of these two elements.
I'm very excited about it. Then I'm going to start the PowerPoint and we'll talk a little bit about where this would land in the foundation of our work. And everybody should have the PowerPoint now. Lynn, would you like to talk a little bit about how we're meant to evolve?
Yeah, what came out of that profound experience of loss and the big shakeup in my sense of self was I realized the identity I'd formed was what I now call a constructed one. It was built on my experiences, my successes, my skills, all of that. And so you can see on the left-hand side, we've written constructed identity. And there's some stages that we move through as we build a constructed identity. But the big wake-up call was that there was something beyond the constructed identity. At 40, I didn't know anything about that. It was quite shocking. And so this identity continuum, as we call it, reflects those three levels of a constructed identity. And when we build that, we can then be ready to move into an authentic identity foundation. And then ultimately, there's people that move towards a universal, where they truly do not feel there's any duality in life and so on. But this really mapped out what I call the human journey that we're all on, the evolution of what we're capable of. So that's the beginning.
And so if we look at this identity continuum, self-esteem is in the constructed identity side, and self-worth, your intrinsic value, that you're worthy just because you're alive, right? Our existence means we have worth. That's the experience from the authentic identity position. And so we're going to focus on self-esteem today, which might sound a little strange. Why wouldn't we just want to go to self-worth? Well, part of the reason is the constructed identity is a phase that everyone goes through. It's an important part of the human journey. And so what we want to do is that the constructed identity is also where the ego lives. And we want to be able to work with the ego. Once we get into the authentic self, authentic identity stage, the idea is that the ego will come along and work with the authentic self will lead. So one of the things that gets in the way, of course, is the ego's petulance and how it takes over all the time with the programming and just guilting or wronging us. So we want to support healthy self-esteem on the ego side. And we're going to go into the different types of self-esteem, say conditional versus unshakable, and how we develop that.
I think, Jeff, before we leave this, it's always fun when we were mapping this out, and you can see at the one side the victim perspective and the justifier and the self-reliant. When we first developed this, we sort of had pet phrases. And so for the victim, it was, it's not me. You know that stage where children go, it's never them or it's never me. That's the ego saying, hey, don't blame me. And then the justifier, when we move into a little bit of self-responsibility and ownership, the justifier voice from the ego will be, okay, I know I'm partly to blame, but, and there's this giant but that comes out very quickly as we then justify and defend and so on. And then the self-reliance is really where we can step into real ownership. Okay, I know I'm part of whatever's going on for me, I'm creating, and I can take ownership and so on. So we see the ego evolving, if you like, or becoming more aware of all the great things we're learning. So our journey today is how we work with some of that.
While you're on this, Lynn, I want to point out to everybody that the stages in the constructed identity are we all have them. They're all part of our growth, and you can bounce. We all bounce between them. So most people in this community will be living primarily with a lot of self-reliance. But at any moment, something can happen and we can fall back to victim. And it's not a thing of like, oh, that never happens in my life. Of course it does.
Yeah.
As you evolve more into the realizing, embracing, embodying the authentic self, your range just gets that much bigger.
That's a great differentiation between a situation, a moment when we go into feeling hard done by, or it's not fair, or whatever, that victim perspective. But when we talk about the stage we're mostly in, we're talking about a more ongoing place that we live from.
Yeah. I think it's important to notice these differences. We're bringing this information. It's like the masculine side of us needs information to know. And then the other side of us, the feminine side, needs that space of loving and acceptance and understanding. Yeah, that's part of how we grow. So Lynn, you would talk a little bit about conditional self-esteem, linking to your first story.
Yeah, I think now, looking back, I would say my self-esteem was very conditional. I would have said I had a pretty good self-image. At the time I was a professional social worker working in schools. I was a mom of a son who was doing well. We had a beautiful home that we had built. Like, what's not to have a good self-concept? But it was very conditional. I discovered it had to do with the credentialing and, so to some degree status, but it was more referenced by the outside. In other words, I was looking outside of me saying I've done well. And my brothers and sisters would say, yeah, you were always on this plan, like get a university degree, get a job, then get married, then get a house, then get a baby. And that was a plan that had a lot of external validation built into it, results, if you like. And I would honestly say even some comparison. I knew where I wanted to be, and that way of thinking had comparison almost unconsciously built into it. The how am I doing? I would reflect outside myself for how I was doing.
So this is an experience that we all have as well, this conditional self-esteem. Our society is built on a lot of these things of status and money and possessions and wanting to be validated or getting approved of by others. And so it's not that there's something inherently wrong with it. It's just that the challenge is that it's a false sense of self-esteem and it's very weak. It can crumble easily. So if it gets taken away, all of a sudden, how you feel about yourself or your opinion of yourself plummets.
Many of you would maybe resonate with people who've lost a job and suddenly they felt like a failure across the board. It wasn't just lost a job, or maybe if you retired. I worked with a fellow who went through bankruptcy. It changed everything in how he did life. He suddenly just wanted security. And so various things can come along, including health challenges and so on, that they put enough pressure on this conditional self-esteem that it starts to wobble.
Well, then I watched this be a challenge for my dad. When my dad retired, he was very attached to, I'm the provider of the house. I have, I run the businesses. I'm the entrepreneur. And I remember saying, like, what's the worry about retiring, Dad? Like, and basically he doesn't know who he is.
Yeah.
He's attached so much to the external of what he does and his status and all of that. So it's a good example of how easily we can get caught in it. So
Leslie, I see you put a comment. Do you want to say something there?
I'm just noticing Lindsay sharing that it is a perfect time for her to be hearing this conversation. And I'm just commenting.
Oh,
nice.
I think
all of us know the power of the right message at the right time. So yes. Glad that's happening for you.
And glad that we can learn from each other. Like, we're going to do a very cool exercise later in this call. And it's really about how do we optimize all that we've gone through as a human being. It's incredible. Anyway, okay, Jeff. Sorry, I just saw that in the chat and I thought it
All
sounded
good. That's great. So we're going to go back to this and say, so we're looking to move away from conditional self-esteem, or this is, people in public might say the person has a big ego idea. This can kind of be that idea. We hold ego slightly differently than that. But let's go to, what do we want instead? So we're working with the ego now inside the constructed identity to build unshakable self-esteem. This is where is an internal thing. Our attention is inward, and where we're looking and standing in our strength and our wisdom. And so this is example could be like when we're living our values. For a moment, how do you feel about yourself when you show up in integrity? When you be real honest.
Yeah.
Right? When you step in those places, you feel really great about yourself, even though it might take courage to do it. You feel great after, like, yeah, okay. And so building skills is similar. As we build skills are something that become our own internal thing. Nobody can take away from us. Like, I played poker for many years. I have an incredibly high skill around poker. I always have that. Nothing external can take that away from me. Sure, over time, enough I don't play, it gets rusty, but I can get back in and develop that skill back pretty quickly. So these are things that are become inherent in our own strength. And of course, owning our achievements. Notice if you achieve things and kind of poo-poo them or downplay them or go like, yeah, it wasn't a big deal. Don't do that. That's the ego messing with you. Step into them like, yeah, I did do that. I feel really good about it. So we can celebrate our achievements and our successes. And then making empowering choices. So this is the choices that are actually better for you overall, or the choices have you living in your values, choosing to go to the gym opposed to staying in bed or sitting on the couch or doing something like that. And all of that is going to build this unshakable self-esteem. So there's two parts we're going to look at in this in a moment. Go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, I wanted to share, I had a real life example last night. I was talking to my son, and so I'm a grandmother of a 16-year-old grandson and a 19-year-old granddaughter. But anyway, so Will, the 16-year-old, decided because at cadets, he was going to be asked to do some leadership piece and he didn't feel ready. So he managed to get home and tell his mom he wasn't going to cadets. And whatever he told her, somehow he convinced her. So Tim, my son, came home, and he's the one that takes Will to cadets. And he hears about this, and it suddenly became this great big challenge in the family and so on. Anyway, we talked about it after. And I said to him, what are you so upset about? And he said, I wanted to be a dad that helped my son realize you've got to step into those hard things and you've got it within you and it can be scary. And think of the times you did things and you didn't want to do them. He said, I just didn't get the chance to be the parent I wanted to be. That's the living the value. It's not that Will did it or didn't go or whatever, but when we stand in our values, say as a parent, and we address those tough situations, we're building what we're choosing to call unshakable self-esteem. So it just was so on point for what we were talking about today.
I like that example, and it actually reminds me as well, like this is, as we all in relationship, and for myself, there's times in relationships where I might show up less than stellar, less than my desired way of being. And this is a great spot for me to build unshakable self-esteem, to be able to turn my attention inward, take ownership of how I'm showing up, assess myself, what am I doing? And then be able to understand why I'm doing that, and then be able to shift and go back and clean up whatever happened in the relationship and say, hey, here, take ownership of how I behaved and what happened for me, and apologize for the situation if it's required or needed, and then strengthen and build that relationship. Afterwards, I feel fantastic. I feel like I've been in integrity, I've been honest, and so I've been living in my values, and I'm creating more depth and meaning in a relationship that I really want. It creates that space for making mistakes and finding forgiveness.
And I just want to add one other thing, because parenting is so important to me. There's so much pressure to look outside yourself, to evaluate how well you're doing as a parent, on how well your children are doing, how they're dressed, how they're performing, how polite are they, have the manners. All of that gets so noisy. It's very, very, very disorienting. And for me, coming back to those core values was a really pivotal shift in how I parented. And now I hope to offer Tim as he parents. But it's really a challenging place. I think, a challenging time to be parenting. Not easy. So, all right.
Let's move into, oh, they're both on here. Okay, well, then you want to talk about building self-esteem first?
Sure. So we're offering that building rather than chasing self-esteem, as Jeff said. We're offering that you can build it through celebrating your learnings and growths and successes. And you may bump into a value or conditioning, as I would call it, of, don't be a tall poppy, don't be a show off, don't brag, right? All that messaging I received. And so learning to celebrate your learnings and your growths and own it, critical. Giving yourself to make permission to make mistakes, and to shift the idea of a mistake from a mistake. Movies do multiple takes. They don't call it mistakes. They just say take 2, take 3, take 4. So can we give ourselves that permission? Practicing and improving skills. There's nothing like feeling really competent at something. When Jeff talks about poker, you can just feel the strength and the pride he has in it. And it's wonderful. And then honoring your life experiences, which is something that we're going to get to. We're going to give you an opportunity to step into some experiences and see if you can really mine those for the gold, honoring them. So, draining.
Yes, and draining. So many of you may relate to these behaviors, but there's just a few of many. How are we showing up when we're draining our self-esteem or giving away our power, you could say? So in this situation, not speaking up, and you've experienced that, and there's something you really want to say, but you choose to pull back or avoid, that drains your opinion of yourself, goes down. How you feel about yourself goes down. Of course, when you criticize yourself, attack yourself, have a negative self-talk, brings down your opinion of yourself, your respect for yourself. Deflecting compliments, a little bit before, like we're saying about owning your accomplishments. It's the same thing. Somebody gives you a compliment and you're like, like you're withering yourself in those moments. Breaking your word or your agreements. Ignoring messages from your body. Your body is giving us information all the time, and our mind can tell us stories that contradict it or override it. So when we slow down and tune into our body, this really helps us build a healthy self-esteem and intuition. So when you override it, it drains. People pleasing and procrastinating, pretty obvious when we're in those ones. Self-esteem is going down the drain.
Some of us have gold medals in some of these.
Definitely worked a lot on people pleasing. So next, we're going to go to this experiential exercise, owning your wisdom. Lynn, would you like to talk a little bit about this?
Sure. So this is where you need some paper and a pen or a pencil or crayons or markers. We're going to invite you to write down some things that you've experienced. And Jeff and I are going to demo it first, just to give you an idea of how we would like you to do it. Because this is not you writing a life story. It's going to be quite different than that. So, Jeff, do you want to talk about the example of poker? Just to give people an example. This is something he's choosing to write down. Poker is an area of skill.
That's right. So you're going to look for an experience in your life, or it could be a skill or a topic. So if we look at the poker example here, what did I learn from poker? The benefit, and that's the first line. And then it was the shadow side. What else did I learn? It was taught me from the shadow side. So the experience of poker taught me patience, taught me to trust my intuition. And it taught me to think strategically.
Mm.
So those are wonderful, great benefits. And on the other side, I also know what it's like to disconnect from life, spend lots of time in poker rooms and not even go outside on a nice sunny day. I know what it's like to chase money and my mind to be very money focused and all around that. So, and it also means, I know what it's like to be compulsive. And so the shadow side also brings great wisdom and great strength. So all of these are strengths that I have built, wisdom I've gained through playing something like poker. And so that's going to be the offer for you guys. You're going to look for different experiences and unpack them this way.
Now, you can choose things, as you write, you can choose things that are a little bit more on the skill side. Like Jeff said with poker, you could also choose more challenging situations. Do you want to mention a challenge, Jeff, just to give them an idea of how they could drill into? Or do you think for time?
For example, I did this myself in looking at loss in my life. So I've had many loved ones pass in my life. And so I looked at the topic of grieving. And so I made a little note and started listening. Okay, so what did grieving teach me? Well, it taught me the ability to be present with profoundly heavy feelings. Overall, it helped me feel all of my feelings more deeply. It helped my heart expand, so I have a greater ability to give and receive love. Also, that brought greater compassion for others. It helped me increase my resilience, a much stronger ground inside myself. It helped me accept the impermanence of life. Life is always changing, no matter what my mind wants. And it helped me have greater appreciation for little moments. Ordinary life is precious, and some of these losses taught me that. And it also taught me that every situation has an opportunity for growth. And so if I were to put all that together in a sentence, I would say I have the resilience that comes from getting knocked down and getting back up when life hits hard. That's my wisdom or strength encapsulated in a sentence.
So what we're inviting you,
if I go over to the shadow side, that was all the benefit side. If I go to the shadow side,
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Then I know what it's like to get lost in sadness and anger. I know what it's like to be stuck in depression. I know what it's like to be dismissive towards life, like, oh, what's the point? I know what it's like to feel victim or feel like life is unfair. I know what it's like to escape into booze and partying and drugs. I know what it's like to have guilt and regret and ruminate on what I could have done differently. If I put all that into a sentence, I know the despair that comes from major loss and heartbreak. And this shows how one experience has all this wisdom built right into it. And every one of you have the same. All these experiences have this wisdom and strength built into it.
So you're going to have about 20 minutes to just dive into your own personal experiences. You can start with skills or things you've done. It could be travel, whatever, but look for what did you learn? What did you gain from those on the positive side? And look for the shadow side. Look for where you maybe, if you traveled, went into judgment or impatience or this or that, and just milk it for what's really there that ultimately is going to add to your wisdom. That's what we're saying. We have incredible wisdom. But when we don't own it and we don't know it consciously, it's there, but it's an untapped resource. And this is a chance to make it more visceral, more real, more present. So let's maybe go, we're going to time it maybe 10 minutes and check in and see how you're doing.
Yeah, I think we're going to try to do 50. So
yeah.
One, do the benefit and then go to the shadow and then pick another experience in your life. You can build a lot here and you'll notice how you feel after.
And you don't need the story. Notice you're not explaining it, defending it. You're just writing down poker, or I'd write down dyslexia, or whatever it is you want to put down there, and then see what's there. Okay. If you want to go off camera, you can, or you can stay on camera, whatever feels comfortable for you.
I guess I could put the slide back up if they want the example there.
Okay, sure. Oh, thank you, Leslie. You also put it in the chat. Lovely.
Oh, okay, great. Then I can take this down. Thank you, Leslie. Hmm.
I'm just watching a thing and I'm
I think I'm going to mute that.
Oh, thanks. Hmm. I'm going to go get some water. This is a place where it's not about quantity per se, and yet we did this recently with a group and quantity was pretty impressive too. Like, wow, look at all the things from things in childhood we dealt with, various challenges, teenage years. Like, there's just so much to draw on. So feel free to range around from different contexts.
if somebody has one that they'd like to share, or you're stuck on one and want to share, Lynn and I'd be happy to go a little deeper with you on it or unpack it a little. Curtis.
Yes.
Yeah, let's hear Curtis.
Yeah, I'm happy to share mine if you like.
Perfect. What's your experience or topic?
It's about becoming a goalie,
Okay.
hockey goalie,
Wow.
and all my experiences with that. So I became a hockey goalie in about 1999.
So Curtis, we're going to ask you just to tell us what you learned
Okay.
or what skills you gained or insight. Yeah.
Okay, the benefits.
Yeah, the benefits.
I felt important,
Ah.
felt wanted and needed.
Mm.
I developed new skills. I developed courage.
Mm.
I got to express myself as an athlete. I learned patience. I learned how to meditate while doing it.
Wow.
I learned camaraderie. I experienced winning and gaining confidence. It's always a challenge, and I've learned to live in the moment.
Mm.
I have great memories, new friends. I feel joy and exhilaration when I play, and I feel accomplishment when I win or make good saves or, things like that.
What a fabulous list, Curtis.
Thanks.
Curtis, I was going to say you experienced winning. Did you have any learnings around losing?
Yeah, let's go to the shadow side.
Yeah, I'm just going to the
Might be
shadow
positive
side now.
still.
Yeah.
Did you learn like healthy ways of losing? I'm wondering, or what loss is like in a healthy.
Yes, I have.
Mhm.
Ah.
So I can talk about those. Actually, let me list a couple more benefits then.
Okay.
I've learned how to lose without getting angry. I've learned that every goalie gets scored on,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no goalies that pitch a shutout every game.
Mm-hmm.
It's not possible.
No.
I've learned that it is okay to have small failures. There's nothing wrong with it. It's expected.
Yep.
So in terms of shadow, a lot of times I felt like a victim. I felt like it was really hard to lose.
Mm-hmm.
I would get angry. I would blame others. I would judge other players. Sometimes I got hurt and had injuries, both physical and mental. A lot of times I lost confidence and I developed resentments towards different players. There was a period of time where I hated the game. I'd get lost in emotion. I'd feel inadequate. I'd compare myself to others. And I had big regrets from not performing the way I thought I could or should have. I also felt like I let other people down if I didn't make a save in a game.
Right.
Like I lost the game for everybody. I suck.
So Curtis, now what we want to ask you to turn it slightly towards the learning the the benefit out of the shadow side. From going to those places of feeling like you're the one that let everybody down, you're this and that. What was the benefit of all that?
So the benefit of all that was learning that and realizing that it's a team game. That it wasn't just me who lost the game.
Yeah.
Everybody who's on the ice has a responsibility for winning.
Yeah.
And, you know, we lose as a team and we win as a team. And I learned that, you know, I can't stop every puck. And I can't be expected to stop every puck. And I just do the best I can. Another thing I've learned is not to get so emotional and get lost in my emotions, but more to just stay in the moment and just let feelings go and just observe, becoming the observer, and not so much getting emotionally caught up in it.
So Curtis,
and that's a huge challenge.
It is.
It's a really huge challenge, and I fail that all the time.
On the ice or off the ice, right?
Yeah, but you know, it really helps me in terms of disciplining myself, not to get angry, not to blame myself, not to blame others. And I still do. But at least I can recognize it when I'm doing it, and not get so caught up in it, and not get not blame everybody and blame myself, just to let it go, you know, and just say, okay, well, this is just a game. And this is what happened in this game. It's only a small part of my life. And it's okay.
It's okay, buddy. That's where I was going to go to. What you're saying, you're sharing. It's when we get into the shadow side of it. The point is, we're human and we experience these experiences. So that gives compassion for ourselves when we can lean into, you know what it's like to be in those spots. And on the flip side, everybody pull back for a moment. Look at all of the wisdom and strength he has got from being a goalie.
Right.
Like, look how this goes into his whole life, and it's going to map into so many other areas from one experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was so important to me. I used to set up hockey tournaments at conferences I went to, and everybody looked forward to that. A lot of my identity has to do with being a goalie, whether that's good or bad, you know. And I've really experienced some awesome times when I've won tournaments, when I've helped win games, when I've had great times going to tournaments at, say, Sun Peaks or other places.
So Curtis, I'm going to stop you just for the sake of time. Have a look in the chat. People are sending you some appreciations.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Good. Any other sharing that anyone would like to do of what it was like to step into taking one thing and drilling into it? Colleen, how did you do with this? I'm going to pick on Colleen because we love each other, and I know I can get away with saying, Colleen. What was this like?
Actually, I was just gonna pop my hand up.
Good.
I did too, and it was really interesting that I found similarities in both the good side of the perspective of that part of what I got, and also from the shadow side of it. There were a lot of similarities in terms of the feelings, the reactions, judgment, the expectations, those kinds of things. So that was interesting to me because one was involved with my family and the other involved with volunteer work. And my impression would have been that the family one would have been more impactful and more emotional, but no, they both rang true and very similar.
Mhm.
Fantastic. And when after you've written those pieces out and seen the wisdom and strength you've built, how do you feel about yourself?
I feel very good because the wisdom component of it is that I've learned. I'm learning as I go along, and I'm able to recognize that there are benefits from particularly the dark side of the shadow side of it.
Mhm.
That part is real, and a few years ago I would never have thought that. I would have been quite critical and of myself and what was happening. But yeah, it's very, very, very interesting.
Well, and the point you're also making here is that a lot of times our wisdom comes from the hardest, most challenging moments in our life. There was a quote, oh, I did write it down. I've never met a strong person who had an easy past. I don't know who said the quote, but I thought, oh, that is so brilliant. And that's very much what we're pointing to here, that we have amazing wisdom and strength in us. And when we tap into this, it's not external. Nobody can take it from us. These are our life experiences, our journey, and the ways that we've developed ourselves through them. The ego can't argue with that.
And the other piece for me was that as I was doing the second, I became very curious in terms of the similarities, and the transition with both of them. Very, very curious in terms of that similar. So thank you.
That's one of the possibilities, is it opens up your curiosity. When I was doing this, it connected dots that I hadn't necessarily connected. And I was feeling that with Curtis, who might have said, wow, I never connected all these things. I knew I loved hockey and it gave me a lot, but did he connect all the dots? When I was looking at being dyslexic as a kid and the worst speller, the worst at math, the slowest reader, but it really put me in touch with the different ways people learn. And that really set the stage for my love of neuroscience and our brains and how we're all different. And then I discovered different kinds of smart. I hadn't actually hooked all of that together with the painful misery of being so poor in school. I certainly knew I gained compassion and so on, but it was very cool to see the connecting links. Yeah.
I think it's beautiful to point out here how, as a culture, I think we struggle with our level of celebration. We talked about it earlier, right? We're so good at ignoring or dismissing or diminishing our wins and our successes. And similarly here, what we're tapping into is a wealth of resources that we each inherently have when we, rather than avoid or shy away from those darker parts, right? But when we really dive into them and take that time, whether the experience is good or bad, when we take the time to really touch in on the learning, we gain so much from that. And it's so powerful. And thank you all for sharing with it. It's really powerful.
Well, Leslie and I was thinking, imagine just for today, we took everything Curtis said and everything all of you have written, and we just stood there and said, these are the resources this little group of people have at their fingertips. Look at the compassion, the love, the insight, the skills, the unit. Like, it's incredible of just what under a dozen people have. If we start to pull together with that kind of energy and build learning communities that celebrate that, that's an incredible force for good in the world. So I love that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see Curtis has his hand up again. Curtis, you have something else to add?
And I just want to mention, we're going to go to questions and answers. So if you have questions, please raise your hand and put them in the chat as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what was said about learning how to take compliments. And I was always terrible with that. I would always dismiss them. But at the same time, I yearned for them,
That's it.
but I never knew how to accept them. And through my men's group with Jeff and others, and this, I'm really learning that it's really important to be able to accept compliments and take them in. And it's something I've been actively working on. When I get complimented for a good game or a good save, I'm accepting that now rather than throwing it away.
So Curtis, are you accepting how much we're appreciating your share today?
Yeah, I mean it's really nice to feel that, and it helps me with my confidence and self-esteem. And
Good.
but I really like what you were saying just before I raised my hand about how great this is for the community, for everybody to feel empowered and feel good about themselves. If we could get more people in the country feeling this way, or even in the city, or even in the town, I mean, or the neighborhood, everything would be so much better.
Very true, Curtis. Anyone
I
else? If you
noticed-
have any other questions? And while you're thinking of questions or want to put some in the chat, I'm also going to share a skill building sheet, a takeaway that you can use to notice in daily life moments when you've fallen into the conditional self-esteem. So I'll drop that in the chat box now. Will you guys offer any other questions?
I was appreciating Colleen's share around compliments are still difficult. And the thing that I think is interesting is what makes it difficult to accept a compliment. Like, seriously, like, what is the actual thing that makes it difficult?
Well, and it's interesting in the chat here, Sarah was just mentioning that she felt like downplaying a compliment was almost the right thing to do.
Yes.
Isn't that so interesting that we're experiencing messaging that says it's wrong for us to say, oh, gee, thank you, or to really let something in, that it's more appropriate to be humble and dismiss that, right? We put so much weight on this idea of being humble that it actually blocks us from building that self-esteem and that sense of self-worth.
Well, and we've watched many people model arrogance and we don't want that. So we pull back, we fall back into that. They've been doing the conditional self-esteem, and something in us picks up on, I don't want to do that. So it's really layered, isn't it?
Well, then that's what I love about this activity, Jeff. It's me going inside of me writing down my experiences, and me choosing what I'm seeing as benefits and strengths and the gold nuggets. Nobody else knows it. Nobody else is doing it, but it's a wonderful way to strengthen the practice of celebrating ourselves. So that I think maybe then we can get good or better at other people celebrating us.
Absolutely. And on the note of celebration and community, of course, I just want to take the moment to let you all know we're always looking for your feedback. I do want to name, Jeff has shared the worksheet in the chat. I don't think it's working for download. And I just want to say, rest assured, we'll send it out to you along with the recording after our session today. So look for that in your inbox within the next couple of days, as well as again, feedback. We want to hear your feedback. Our goal is to create really valuable sessions with our community. And so if you have ideas or topics that you would love for us to be diving more deeply into, questions you want to ask and explore, we would love to hear from you. And again, to share your time in the middle of a day, in the middle of the week.
Yeah.
So grateful to do that. As Lindsay shared before she hopped off, thanks for the beautiful moment in the middle of my day. And so I think, just like if we can together stand on the solidity of all of the beauty and the skills and the learnings that we bring to the world. Likewise, when we can infuse our day-to-day with moments like this, I would truly think we're all winning.
I agree totally, Leslie. And I'd like to open the floor to hear what's your biggest takeaway from today?
Yeah.
Either put your hand up and share or type it in the chat. Love to hear what your biggest takeaway was. And I want to see I see something from Shirley I just want to comment on while you're thinking of that. And she's saying, I have a big ego that needs to be fueled. Well, in a sense, that's the constructed identity. We all do. And so the point is, are we going to fuel it with those conditional self-esteem behaviors, or are we going to fuel it with our internal strength and wisdom so that it can then get on board and support us as we evolve into our authentic selves?
Yeah. The conditional is when we look outside ourselves and want others to recognize us or something to happen outside ourselves that we don't actually have direct control of. And the unshakable or unconditional self-esteem we can build is coming from within us. So that's a simple way to kind of think about it. But
Susan.
yes, Susan, you got your hand up. Yay.
So I find that sometimes it's so hard to accept compliments because it's actually accepting that you've actually done good work. You're actually a good person. You've received a good compliment. And sometimes accepting that and actually realizing that they actually mean something good toward what I've done, that's difficult. For me, it's extremely difficult. I think deep down, I know I'm a good person and I do good work, but for somebody else to realize that and for me to accept that, that's extremely difficult.
Yeah. I had an experience around this, Susan. I'll say really quickly because I know time's almost up. But I did a presentation for some friends. I was practicing, and then afterwards, one of my friends said, "You did a really great job," and I was like, "Oh, thanks." And then she caught my facial expression. She's like, "You think I'm lying to you?" I was like, "I think you're being nice." And she's like, "Well, I don't need to be nice. I'm being honest with you." But it was the first time I really had somebody call me out on it. I just dismissed compliments my whole life. So I get what it's like very much. Sarah.
It's more of a comment. This really helped me because I was terrible at accepting compliments for a long time as well. And somebody said something along the lines of, when we say, they say, "I like your shirt," and you're like, "Oh, this old thing, I got it, $7 at this place," is we're actually like rejecting a gift they're trying to give us. Yeah. And when I saw it from that perspective, I was like, ooh, it's not even really about me. I'm allowing them to give me that gift. That really changed it for me and helped a lot.
It's a great
reframe. I love it. Yeah. Well, I recognize the time.
Yes.
Last minute. So thank you all for coming out. Yay. And appreciate your participation. And like Leslie said, we'd love to hear topics you want to talk about. And we're going to meet in 2 weeks, same time, Wednesday, October 2nd, and have another table topic about whatever it is you guys want to talk about. We'll get the messages from you guys, then we'll send out an email about it. I look forward to seeing you all then. I hope you have a wonderful day today.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Well done, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Great to see everyone.
Yeah, so great, Colleen.
Thanks, Colleen.
Nice to see you, Shirley. I sent you a message, by the way.
You're on mute. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Leslie. You run too.
I'm going to run too. Thanks.
Yeah,
I
you
got
go.
notes